Have you ever seen a movie where something happens that just makes no sense? The 2018 film October is exactly like that. It's this quiet, beautiful movie, but there's a central puzzle that's so confusing you might think it's a huge plot hole. A character makes this massive, life-changing decision, and you're left scratching your head. But here's the thing. What if that plot hole isn't a mistake? What if it's the whole point of the movie?
Okay, so the whole movie really boils down to this one question. You've got this guy, he's kind of lost, just drifting through his job. And all of a sudden, he completely devotes his life to a coworker who falls into a coma. And here's the crazy part. They barely knew each other. Like, at all. So this sudden, totally all-consuming devotion, that's the mystery we're going to try and crack today.
And you know, the film's own trailer kind of gives us a heads up. It says, this is not a love story. This is a story about love. Now, that might sound like the same thing, but that little difference is everything. It's super important, so let's just tuck that away for later.
All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to start with the mystery, check out the usual theories and why they don't really work, and then we're going to bring in a totally new idea from, of all places, fan culture that might just crack this thing wide open. Then we'll tie it all together with what the filmmakers were trying to do and what it all says about love.
Okay, let's dive in and set the scene. This isn't your typical mystery, right? There's no crime, no detective. The whole puzzle starts with an act of kindness, but it's so extreme, so out of nowhere, that it feels, well, almost obsessive. So meet Dan. He's our main guy, and honestly, he's not very impressive. He's a trainee at a hotel, kind of lazy, a little bit entitled, always complaining. And then you have his colleague, Shuli. She's the complete opposite, focused, smart, professional. And here's the key. They work together, sure, they say hi, but that's it. There is zero evidence of any kind of deep connection. They're just coworkers, period.
And then, tragedy strikes. One night, Shuli has a terrible fall and ends up in a coma. A few days go by, and Dan finds out what her last words were just before it happened. It was a simple question. Where is Dan? And that's it. That's the spark. That one little phrase lights a fire under him and sends him down this path of complete devotion that has had audiences totally baffled ever since.
So, of course, everyone's got a theory about Dan's behavior. I mean, you have to try and make sense of it, right? People have argued about it forever. And pretty much all the explanations fall into three main buckets. But the tricky part is, the movie itself seems to throw a wrench in every single one of them.
Now, these theories look pretty solid at first glance. Theory 1, it was a secret, unspoken love story waiting to happen. Theory 2, the darker take, Dan is just a narcissist using this horrible situation to feel important. And Theory 3, he just falls in love with her after the accident. They all seem like they could work, don't they?
And this is where it gets frustrating. This review just nails it. For every single clue you find that points to one theory, the movie gives you something that completely cancels it out. Like, if they were secretly in love, why was he so indifferent before? If he's just a selfish guy, why on earth does her mom trust him completely? And if he only falls in love later, what explains that instant crazy obsession? It feels like the film is intentionally leaving us with nothing that makes sense.
So, if all the usual answers are wrong, then what are we supposed to think? Well, this is where things get really interesting. We have to throw out the old rule book. The key to this whole thing might not be in some highbrow film theory, but in modern fan culture. So let's talk about this term, a shipper. If you spent any time on the internet, you probably know this one. A shipper is basically a fan who really wants two characters to get together, even if there's almost zero proof in the story that they will. They'll take the smallest thing, a look, one line of dialogue, and build an entire romance around it. They're basically creating the love story in their own head. Does that sound a little familiar?
Okay, get ready for the aha moment. What if Dan isn't a secret lover or a selfish user? What if Dan is a shipper for a relationship between himself and Shuli? The minute you look at it that way, suddenly it all makes perfect sense. That giant plot hole we were talking about? It's not a plot hole. It's the whole dang movie.
I mean, just think about his actions from this angle. He hears her last words, "Where is Dan?" and he latches onto it. That's his proof. He starts going back over every tiny, meaningless interaction they ever had, looking for hidden signs. He even puts a photo of himself by her bed. He's literally writing himself into the love story. He's not finding a love that existed, he's building one from scratch, based on a single, flimsy piece of evidence.
And this comment from a fan forum just says it perfectly. The movie isn't about did Shuli love Dan? Not at all. It's about Dan deciding that she did. and then dedicating his entire life to that belief. He basically becomes the founder and the only member of the Dan and Shuli fan club.
And this is so important. This isn't just some clever way to explain away a bad script. No way. This theory suggests the filmmakers were doing something much smarter. They were making a movie about a person who learns what unconditional love is by creating a love story and then choosing to live in it. All those things that felt like contradictions, that's the whole point.
And if you're still not convinced, just wait. This whole idea gets even stronger when you start looking at the symbolism the filmmakers packed into the movie.
Believe it or not, this whole idea is built right into the character's name. The screenwriter said that the moment she named the character Shuli, she knew exactly what her fate would be. See, Shuli isn't just a name, it's a type of flower, and the character was written to be just like that flower. So the Shuli flower is really special. It only blooms in the dark, at night, and then, as soon as the sun comes up, it falls. It's this symbol of something incredibly beautiful, but also fragile and very short-lived. A life that shines in the dark and is gone by morning. Sound familiar? That's Shuli's story, and that's her connection with Dan.
Now check this out. This image might seem totally random, but its theme is a perfect match for the film. It comes from a journal that talks about celebrating chaos and conflict as something that can lead to regeneration. And that's October in a nutshell. The film takes this messy, confusing, chaotic tragedy and shows how something beautiful and meaningful can grow from it. That's exactly what happens to Dan. So, all of this brings us full circle, right back to that tagline from the beginning.
Even the director, Shujit Sircar, says the confusion was on purpose. He flat out said, "We don't know if they were in love." He wanted to move the question away from, is it romance, and toward the act of caring. The point isn't whether the feeling was mutual, it's about the kind of selfless devotion that, a family member gives without even thinking about it.
So at the end of the day, here's what we've got. October isn't really a puzzle about a secret love affair. It's a deep dive into how a totally lost person finds his purpose. And he doesn't find it by being loved, but by the act of loving someone else. He takes one tiny, uncertain phrase and builds a whole universe of meaning from it, and then he decides to live there. And that leaves us with one last big question to chew on. If love is really about what you do, about devotion, about sacrifice, then is a love that someone builds all by themselves and lives out every single day any less real than a love that's returned? The movie doesn't tell you the answer. It just leaves you to wonder, what does love really mean anyway?